All right, thank you, Nancy. Oh, let me turn this off. So it looks like we're ahead of schedule, so we'll be out of here by 4 today. That's pretty good. That is true. So next, we're going to have a trio of liaisons. They're going to talk to you about professionalism and protocol, chairs and vice chairs, and it looks like they have some uniforms on. So I will hand it off to them.
Thanks, Alex. Is it afternoon? Oh, it's not afternoon yet. Hello, everyone. This is going to make sense at the end of the presentation. And it's not about, yes, it will. It's not about hockey fights when you pull the shirt up over the back. So we're going to talk to you, let me introduce Janice with Marilyn Kirkpatrick's office.
Sue Baker with Commissioner Larry Brown's office. Tamara Williams, Commissioner Chris June Kiliani.
Yay. And Blanca's going to find the presentation. So if we're here, then we're going to be changing vice chairs and chairs at our first meeting coming up in January. Or for Bunkerville, who couldn't make it today, their first meeting isn't until February. But so Clint Eastwood made the chair famous, right? I was going to have a little chair sitting here, but we want to get through this relatively quickly. So I talked earlier with Alex about how you're going to vote for your chair and vice chair. Is everybody comfortable with how you're going to do that at your first meeting? And if you've been the chair for the last 2 years, you can't be the chair for the next 2 years. And try to mix it up a little bit if you can. Don't, vice chair, you're the chair. No, you're the vice chair. No, you're the chair. Try to mix it up. We have a lot of faith in all of the folks that are on the town board meetings. I'm a big proponent of trying to let the vice chair chair the meeting while the chairman is there, so that if you have a situation where the chair can't be there at really short notice, the vice chair is not having a meltdown that this is the first meeting they're ever going to have to chair all by themselves. So maybe you could do that sometime during 2017. Next slide. So, of course, the chairman or chairwoman is responsible to keep the meeting flowing. You want to ensure that, we talked about just about everything already today, that the first public comment is for items only on the agenda. Then you go through the items, then you have public comment for anything else that anybody wants to talk about. But it's the chair's responsibility to keep to the point, don't get off on other tangents, get through the items and get everybody home in a timely manner if you can. Also, the chair needs to have some caution with making sure that both the opposition and the supporting for an item gets equal time and can be as passionate as they want to be about whatever it is they're talking about. Because we are so happy that they came to our meeting, take the time out of their busy day, which is usually supper time when we have these meetings for folks to come. So just please ensure that everybody gets equal time that's coming to speak for an item at your town board. What's next?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
To back up a bit.
Sure.
I think there's a misconception in there between chairman and vice chair. We came to this determination a couple of years ago that
Oh.
the vice chair could not run for chairman in the succeeding term because the vice chair might be a chairman already.
I think we've clarified that since that came up before.
She just had the opposite.
Can the vice chair become the chair?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
That's the first time.
Well, thank goodness you're here today.
We're always changing with the times, David, you know that.
Okay, meeting facilitation, because you haven't heard this at all today, I'll repeat it. TABCAC is our representative of Clark County as an extension of the BCC, so you assist them with making decisions in your town. Chairs run the meeting and set ground rules that are not listed on the agenda, and that was one of the handouts that you got when you came in, a list of ground rules, and it's really up to the chair which ones you want to vocalize at the beginning of the meeting. I'm impartial to the speaker, is limited to 3 minutes as people tend to get off onto different tangents. So, it's up to you to set the ground rules that that are most applicable to your town. Study the chair instructions for steps in public hearing zoning item. That was the other handout, which is basically a step-by-step instructions for how to run the meeting. New members should take a look at this as well. Even if you watch like a BCC or PC meeting, you can just look at the instructions and just follow along, and then you know how the meeting is supposed to flow. And make sure questions are addressed to the board counsel to avoid arguments between applicants and citizens. And, a lot of the time, citizens will come to the meetings with pitchforks ready to attack the applicant because maybe at a previous meeting, they didn't agree with what they had to say. And then they're eager to confront that applicant, and then the applicant becomes defensive. Just be prepared to tell them that they need to address all their questions to the board to avoid those kinds of conflicts and arguments. And next slide. Make sure there are clear recommendations and enforceable conditions. A lot of the times you need to go by, all the time you need to go by Title 30 and, state law. And Janice and I were talking about this yesterday. If you have an animal rescue and pigs are allowed, you can't say, I like bacon, and you can't have pigs, so just make sure that any of the recommendations that you make are enforceable.
We're trying to lighten it up, folks. We're trying to have some fun before we're done.
And chairs, make sure you sign off on recommendation sheets to verify conditions are consistent with the motion. A lot of the BCC read the recommendation sheets, so you want to make sure what you decided is conveyed on the recommendation sheets. You want to look at them and sign off on them. And prepare the applicant for the BCC or PC process. Sometimes an applicant will, if they're approved, they'll go away going, yay! Or if they're denied, they'll be like all bummed out about it. Just make sure you let them know you're an advisory board, you're not final action, and they need to go to their next meeting and bring all the materials necessary to make their case. And have a plan to bring the meeting back into focus if it gets off track, whether that be the gavel or just going back to the ground rules if you need to. I know a lot of the times, my pet peeve is when an applicant is approved and all the people there for that item kind of linger around, and as a chair, you have to continue the meeting. You just want to say, okay, please take your conversation outside. So you just have to have a plan to get the meeting back on track. Taser work? Yeah, taser.
So we're going to show you just a quick, we had to minimize because this was done.
One more video.
One more video. That's the one. This is for a fellow.
Needs it before he goes to another meeting that will be affected by it.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
it is perfectly okay under our rules, and I don't want you to imply that it isn't, because that's not fair. It is okay. So don't say any more.
You don't have to speak to me that way. You can.
Yes, I do.
Oh, you don't.
If you don't have respect
It has
for
nothing.
our process,
No, it has
then I
nothing.
have to speak to you that way.
Brian,
And also put you as recognized.
don't throw your friggin' hat at me.
Go ahead.
You know what's funny? If you can Google that later and
Microphone.
find it, because you were watching him throwing the hat.
Janice,
and you're watching
microphone.
her react.
Microphone, Janice.
If you watch the other members that are sitting around the table, one of them is just cracking up. He's laughing so hard. Another guy I think he's never going to come back after that meeting, but I think that happens with some of you that have been around or on the same board for so long. You've got maybe a relationship that the audience doesn't know about. So I don't think she liked him throwing his hat at her, but you get the point that there's people watching that don't know how long you want to say it one more time? Huh? Is it worth it? Show, because I want them to take a look at. Could you play it again? I'd like them, just look at the two guys in the back, because they're pretty funny. They remind me of some town board members I
needs
might
it
know.
before he goes to another meeting that will be affected by it.
Yeah, I
So it is
understand.
perfectly okay under our rules, and I don't want you to imply that it isn't, because that's not fair. It is okay. So don't say any more.
You don't have to speak to me that way. You can.
Yes, I do.
Oh, you don't.
If you don't have respect
It has
for
nothing.
our process,
No, it has
then I
nothing.
have to speak to you that way.
Brian,
Councilor Pritchard is recognized.
don't throw your friggin' hat at me.
Go ahead.
And so like what Janice points out is you can see the interaction of the other board members, but also, it was funny, but it's not funny if it's you, right? And the other thing is, you're a team. You guys are a team, and you got to stick together, even if you're totally disagreeing with what another one of the town board members is reflecting. But beyond that, think about it this way. What does the audience think about what's going on there? And I've had some board meetings get a little out of hand, and I've had neighbors that come just because they're genuinely interested, and they go, oh my God, I am not coming back here again. What a farce. And you know what? That's bad, because you've lost valuable input at future zoning actions because you aren't getting the input of the people because you've run a meeting so horribly they refuse to give up their time to come back. So you got to be mindful all the way around and bite your tongue sometimes. The other thing is, think of the applicant. He's paid money. He's put an application in. He's seeing what's going on at that meeting, and he's thinking, they're so flipping mad at each other. I don't even know that they're thinking about my action and what's my recommendation going to be, and is it anywhere close to what it should be based on the dynamics of that meeting. So it's really important from everybody's perspective that the meeting get run a little bit more professional than not. And I work at Lone Mountain now. I've been out in the rurals, and I know you think we're a little more relaxed. It's really okay to be a little bit more relaxed. But here's a couple of tips that I've observed that can bring a meeting back together. And then I'd like to ask you guys if a couple of people could share a horror story or a tip if you've run a meeting. So you've got 20 people in the audience. It's a casual meeting, easy presentation. You have a podium, but someone in the audience just wants to throw something out. I shouldn't make them get up and come to the podium because we're casual. Next thing you know, 3, 4 more people are shouting stuff out in the audience, and you've lost control of the meeting. So it is important to say, we want to listen to you. Please come on up to the podium. Give your name for the record. So not only does it help keep the meeting in control, but for the recording, you can hear what the applicant is saying. Another example is a guy's really passionate, little nervous, you want to help him out, and he's going on and on and on. Well, you're 10 minutes into the meeting, so you let him go. 2 hours later, 2 more people want to speak, and they're going to ramble, and you're like, you only get 3 minutes. Well, I sat through 4 other people that you let ramble for 10 minutes. You owe me that same right. And so it seems so innocent at the beginning, but later on, you're like, oh my heck, I made a mistake there. And we did want to have a little interaction at this point. So if we have some members that have observed something go wrong that they would like to maybe mention to give helpful tips to some of the new board members, or if you've ran a meeting and have some good tips, please, now's the time if we could just spend a few minutes to interact with each other about that.
Just one of the things that we've always used as far as when they start speaking in the audience is just advising them that this is indeed a public meeting. It's being recorded. And so we do need you to state your name and step up to the podium so that everyone that looks at this event or agenda item later hears your comment. So that will usually kind of steer them towards the podium so we don't get a lot out in the audience.
Looking for a couple more, please, thanks.
If we have a large crowd, especially an emotional large crowd, my practice was to let 1 or 2 people speak, try to hold them to about 3 minutes, and then ask for a show of hands as to who agreed with the presentations that these folks made. And then if someone subsequent to raising their hand wanted to speak, I could challenge them saying, do you have something additional, new, or different? And that helped control the volume and also control the length of time that was argued on one side or another of an issue.
That's a great point in that I know they say when you see a whole community represented in an area, you can say, is one or two people going to speak for the group? We use that a lot at the Board of County Commission meeting, and so when you have a large group, that's a good thing to help them keep the meeting in control. Any other stories?
I've been on the board probably 17 or 18 years, and chair of it 4 or 5 times. But we've always gone on a clear instructions from the DA's interpretation that we could not succeed ourselves. And by that, we also meant that you couldn't succeed your vice chair because you are in a position where you could be chair twice. And I'm virtually certain that that the correct interpretation of it is the opposite of what you read.
We'll confirm that for you, Mr. Berg, we will. Sue's looking for some dirt. Come on, who's got a good story? And it doesn't have to be a town board meeting.
I was just going to say that you've already ruled out my most popular way of getting a meeting back coalesced together, and that's beat up staff. Target staff, the audience, everybody joins together and gets on the same page.
Sammy and Nancy are shaking their head. Denied. All right, well, Sue's got the next to last slide.
No,
It's-
well, let me just go through a couple of other things with professionalism, and I think it's been a long day, a lot of information. I think it was very clear at the beginning when you took that oath of office, oh my gosh, this is real, right? And so you are volunteers, but you did make that commitment to represent Clark County and your community, and so you have to just be mindful of that. You are wearing the hat of a county commission when you're sitting in that chair. And so some people talked about, don't I have my own right? Yeah, but sort of not when you're wearing that county commission hat when you're sitting in that chair. And when they were joking about when they see you at the grocery store, at the restaurant, when they're asking you stuff about that zoning item, they think you're representing the county. And so we ask that you be mindful of that. And I know, you know the story where somebody was wronged by a building permit and it sat there for 2 years before they got approved, and they tell everybody how terrible the county is and everything's wrong, and then all of a sudden that person realizes they were the one that made the mistake. But they don't go tell the 50 people that they told the county really stinks. And so we ask the same thing here. When you hear stuff from a neighbor about something that's going wrong, you know what? We might have got it wrong. We don't try to get it wrong. And so use your connections, because I got to tell you, the liaisons, we are your connection. And you may know people directly in Public Works, you may know somebody directly in code enforcement, but you know us. And so we ask that you give us the benefit of the doubt. And if you ever have any question, tell that person, let me help you, or here's this liaison's name. Go to them and see what they can do to help you. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, it's bad information and it's not even the right process. And the other one time, you know what? I don't know how many here, but I know Lone Mountain, we've changed rules based on this doesn't make any sense. And we're open to that. Nancy and Sammy are open to changing stuff all the time when it doesn't make sense. So probably we got it right and people misunderstood, but maybe we didn't get it right and we can make it change. But be an advocate for the county. Don't jump on the bandwagon to bash us, at least until you give us a chance first. And that's what I'm asking for. And I have this story, I think Steve Swikert brought it up underneath the ethics. When you're on Facebook, when you're tweeting, be mindful. And I'll tell you a story, and it was hurtful to me. Town board made a recommendation for somebody and imposed some conditions. And the applicant was not honoring the conditions. As town board, you want our code enforcement to enforce the conditions you imposed. We were working with that applicant for 2 years to get it right, and he wouldn't comply. And so we finally pounced on him And one of the town board members was like, how dare the county do that? And I'm like, how do you do that when it was your conditions that were imposed? And so that's just one example, but it just so innocent. You're so passionate about something, and you're like, don't forget what hat you're wearing when you're talking through the county. And so I think that's the big message that we wanted to relay to everybody. You can beat up on staff a little bit. We're tough. We've heard it all, seen it all. So, but ask us first, and I think that's the big message to want to give out. And then the last thing is, if you haven't observed a planning commission or board of county commission, they're pretty fun to watch, and it does give you some helpful tips, and you see situations that are happening in your community are happening in most of the other communities as well. So that's a good thing to see how they handled it and what new conditions that they might be a good thing for you to want to impose on somebody. And with that,
So my commissioner, Marilyn Kirkpatrick, has seats on 5 town boards, 1 CAC and 4 TABs. Of those 5 town boards, we have 7 individuals who've never been on a town board before. So you see these adorable little penguins, and everybody thinks, well, they're waterproof and they're amazing. Well, they're not. When they're first born, they can't even go in the water because they would drown and they would die. And I'm not saying any of the new town board members are going to drown and die, but I'm asking for those who have come back to just be mindful of somebody who's brand new that's going to need some help getting through. One of our town boards, we've lost Holy Toledo, 60 years worth of institutional knowledge or historical knowledge, whatever you want to call it. So I have some concerns going forward for some of the boards. Please know the liaisons, the fun group that we are, any of us are here to help you with anything that you have being a new town board member. And then, of course, lean on your other members. And again, the returning members, just think of those newbies as adorable little penguins that you're going to help, and not hockey fights, not pull the shirt up over like in Happy Gilmore and punch them. So thank you very much. Thanks for being here today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I say it now? Go Pens!